This is Money Moves on VSiN, the sports betting network.
I had to ask myself this morning multiple times what day it is. It's Wednesday, everybody.
It's Wednesday, my dudes.
To Money Moves on VSiN, the sports betting network. He's Jonathan Tobel. I'm Stormy Buonantony. We're live as always from downtown Las Vegas, Circa Resort and Casino. But do you ever have that happen to you where you're just like, what? Where am I?
Yeah, of course. I mean,
I logged into our Tuesday rundown like 3 times this morning.
Yeah, I mean, you understand this because you're in the same boat, albeit at a different degree. We work 7 days a week. I don't know what's happening or what's going on. I have no idea, like, nothing. It's why I have a planner that kind of keeps me on track to certain things and when I have to go. But yeah, I have no idea.
It all starts to just blur together at some point,
Of course,
I think. Yeah. Which is also, speaking of planning, which is also why we have a rundown every day here on Money Moves. And let's kick this thing off like we always do with it. Let's go.
It's time for the top headlines and topics of the day. This is the Rundown.
All right, running down the top items we have in today's show, which includes a couple of great guests, Kendall Valenzuela in her usual spot in about 30 minutes of Fantasy Life. We're going to talk through some fantasy angles. So many injuries in the NFL right now. Where could you have some opportunity from a fantasy or prop betting perspective? And ESPN's Chris Budden is going to join us as well, fresh off of what was a chaotic weekend for her in the upset of Georgia Tech against Clemson. She's on the sidelines for Clemson again this week, so excited to get her thoughts on both of those squads and more.
The K-State angle with her too, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so really looking forward to that and getting her thoughts on what the downfall has been for your Wildcats and see what's been going on. So a lot of different angles we can discuss, Kendall. Why are you just shaking your head?
Because it's been so sad. And speaking of college football, it is West Coast Bias Day here on Money Moves. So that means we're going to talk through some of the West Coast games that don't get as much love. So no, I'm not talking about Texas Tech, Utah. Another huge game in the Big 12, though. ASU Baylor we'll get to. USC Michigan State. Spice up your life with a little Cal SDSU. I know you're very excited about Fresno State, Hawaii in the late night spot. We got a lot of fun stuff.
See, I think you assumed that because I never told you that, but I am very excited for Fresno State at Hawaii. It seems like it's going to be a pretty good game, a fun one at that. Mike Alejado is going to come back for Hawaii after getting the last 2 weeks off. So very interested to see what the young kid has with some time to rest that foot that looked like it was pretty painful for him. And if they could get Fresno in a pretty bad spot, making the trip out to the island.
Speaking of the West Coast, we're going to kick this thing off today in L.A. It was showtime for Shohei Ohtani last night. On a night he tossed 5 no-hit innings, followed up with his 50th home run of the season as well. He's now hit the mark in back-to-back years in L.A. Third player, JVT, in MLB history to reach that mark in his first 2 years with any team. The other 2 were Alex Rodriguez and Babe Ruth. Perhaps you're familiar with their work, so great night for him. But here, I will say, something he's unfortunately very familiar with from his time with the Angels, no matter how good he performs. Came in a loss yesterday to the Phillies.
That was unnecessary, but I will say, it speaks to, this has been a point of contention for a lot of folks that has been brought up, which is, I understand the whole third time through the lineup and all of those sort of things, but when the guy's on 68 pitches in 5 innings and you have a very untrustworthy bullpen, maybe let him go out there for like one more and see what he's got. And instead, like you mentioned, Robleski comes out there, coughs up 5 earned runs in a third of an inning, gets taken deep, doesn't strike out anybody. It's just pieced up, and they go on to lose the game. That's a pretty tough one for LA, and it just goes to show as we get closer to this MLB postseason, in which it seems that both of these leagues are relatively wide open. There is not really a team outside of, I would argue, still Milwaukee that you can trust at this point right now. But it is a fair shot in that Ohtani is very much used to, hey, 2 solo shots, 7 strikeouts over 6 innings, and they lose 1-0, as they usually did in Anaheim. And it seems to be the same thing here with the Dodgers.
Yeah, 9-6 final out there. And I know that there had been some questions about the pitching of Ohtani getting into the postseason. Since that day against Colorado, last 3 outings, given up just 5 hits and 1 run and 13 2/3 of work. So 19 strikeouts, by the way, as well. The NL MVP odds for him now, minus 10,000. Yeah. No matter how many home runs Kyle Schwarber hits, not even close, 19-1, which we're having a similar situation in the AL MVP market as well, because might as well go there also last night. Give it up for the big dumper. Cal Raleigh hits 2 more yesterday against the Royals for numbers 55 and 56 of the season and 12-5 win. Raleigh now passes Mickey Mantle to set the switch hitter home run record in a single season and tied Ken Griffey Jr. for the most in club history with Seattle. Yeah, I'm going to be curious to see. It's like Ohtani's been playing obviously at an incredible level. The pitching is extended. We had asked that question
when it was first coming around, we had asked Mike Palm about it, like, hey, is he going to get this really, like, pitching 1 or 2 innings? But obviously he's been stretched out, so I think he deserves these odds. For Judge in this dynamic, it's going to be pretty interesting to see how this continues to play out for the AL MVP. But it seems like it's at least not going to go Raleigh's way if we believe where we're at with this betting market, which has Judge at minus 1,000. But you can at least make the argument, look, August, it was a relatively quiet month for Judge, hitting 241, as we know, only 6 home runs. That is probably something that still is going to be enough to get this thing for him. But I think Raleigh deserves a little bit more respect, but not going to get there.
Seattle's got 11 games left. If he hits 3 more, that'll be top 10 all-time in a single season. 4 would be 60, something only Barry Bonds, Mark McGwire, Aaron Judge, Sammy Sosa, Roger Maris, and Babe Ruth have done.
This is why I wish we had different – I stress this almost every year when it comes to some of these awards, because when we get to this time of year, a lot of the time in sports, we will have a heavy favorite. I wish that these books and whatnot would give us some more exotic markets on some of these MVPs. Over-under finish, total points, like in terms of spread, right on the final ballot, things like that would at least enhance the conversation about what you're looking at and different things to discuss, because I think that would be a ton of fun. Over-under first place votes would be a fun one as well. Just little different ways so that you could actually have real discussions about this instead of us going, hey, Cal Raleigh hit his 67 millionth home run, but Aaron Judge is still minus 1,000. What do you think? And I go, well, he's probably going to get more votes than we initially think, but he's still going to lose. It just gives us something else to look at here.
Yeah, and that is the prevailing number, right? Minus 1,000 at DraftKings, minus 900 at FanDuel. I see as high as minus 1,200 in the market. So none of these markets giving Raleigh a shot. We did get some injury news in the NFL. I want to make sure we hit on here. A few teams impacted. But for one, we thought this would be the case for Justin Fields. Adam Schefter reporting this morning he will be out for this Sunday's matchup against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He got knocked out in the fourth quarter of last week's loss to Buffalo. So Tyrod Taylor will start. He did play the last 2 drives in mop-up duty of that game. And I say this was expected because the line hasn't moved at all. I think when he was in concussion protocol, you felt like that was going to be tough, especially for a quarterback to work his way out of it in a single week. This line's still at 7, total 43.5. And we were kind of joking before we came on air going through just the numbers in that Bills game. For Fields, before exiting the game on Sunday, he was 3 of 11 passing for 27 yards, no touchdowns, no picks, 49 yards rushing on 5 carries. Taylor, that was on 8 drives, by the way. Tyrod Taylor in 2 drives at the end of the game, 7 of 11 passing, more than double the yards, 1 touchdown, 21 rush yards on 3 carries.
Yeah, I think Tyrod this is part of the logic a little bit of why in our futures draft I take it over on the New York Jets. Thought they could be like this plucky team. It's a little bit better. Again, going over to the overarching narrative, which is last year was a playoff roster, according to many. Now this year, it's a roster full of bums, despite the fact that really one big piece is Aaron Rodgers is on a different team. Tyrod Taylor's still a really serviceable quarterback. He is, I think, able to come in and start long stretches and give your offense enough. And in this offense under Tanner Ingstrad, as we've talked about, this Detroit-style, Ben Johnson-esque offense, I think there's something to be said of him being able to keep this ship afloat. And lest we not forget, the Bucs are going through a lot of injuries offensively and defensively. So this could be an instance where, for a pretty big favorite, a team that barely got by both of its opponents, week 1 and week 2, skated by the skin of their teeth, that maybe if you're catching a full 7 with the New York Jets on the road here, might be a chance to come in and back them. I'm going to be curious to see what the market wants to do, but for me, my interest is squarely on the Jets side here, even with the news that Tyrod Taylor is going to be the starting quarterback. One
thing I would say, because I do still like Tampa to win this game, especially at home, great teaser leg option potentially as well, bringing that down to just win the game. Injuries also appear to be piling up for the Minnesota Vikings. We already knew J.J. McCarthy was going to miss this week with the high ankle sprain, so in comes Carson Wentz. Then we find out last night Minnesota has placed their starting running back Aaron Jones on injured reserve with a hamstring. Let's also add in starting left tackle Christian Darrisaw, reportedly close to a return but has missed the first couple weeks. His backup and Andrew Van Ginkel are both in concussion protocol, as is Jeff Okudah, and Harrison Smith has been inactive for the first 2 weeks. He's supposed to practice today, though, so looking up. But a lot of stuff going on with Minnesota.
It is. This is a game that I'm so interested in. So I wanted to ask you in this sense for Minnesota and Cincinnati, as it's sitting at 3, juice to that side. Remember when this dropped down to 2.5, we had both discussed the fact that, 2.5 might seem light. Maybe this should be actually 3. That's been the predominant case. One shop's at 2.5, and it's like minus 135 to the favorite side. The way I've been thinking about it is, what do we know more about for each team? And what do we feel more confident in? And the way I was going to present it was, I feel confident Kevin O'Connell is a floor raiser for quarterbacks. Is that fair?
Fair.
I feel confident that Brian Flores is a great defensive game planner that's going to be able to get the most out of this group, and he has for the first 2 weeks, right?
Okay.
And I know that Cincinnati's a pretty poor defensive team, as we know to this point, and that a guy like Jake Browning is going to put the ball in danger. I think all of this leads me to still, I think it's the Minnesota side here. I understand everything going on, and I can't remember who sent it to us yesterday, I like the argument that, are we really downgrading Minnesota this much because J.J. McCarthy, who has played 8 quarters, 7 of which have been awful, that's the difference between him and Carson Wentz, who has made a lot of starts in the NFL? I don't know, man. I think this Vikings team, even with everything you've talked about, is coming off as kind of cheap here in this game.
This was a hard stay away for me, but I do agree with everything you're saying about the quarterback drop-off perspective. We have seen nothing from J.J. McCarthy, with the exception of, as you mentioned, 1 quarter of football to tell us that he's going to be able to do anything.
Yeah, but the betting market said that's a 3-point downgrade.
And I completely disagree with that again. The 3 is the prevailing number we're sitting at right now, 41.5. Also, just want to note here, Chargers, it looks like they avoided the worst case scenario on Khalil Mack. His elbow dislocated on Monday night.
Ugh.
Ian Rappaport and Mike Garafolo said he should be back in a few weeks. So although there was a scare, maybe this could be a season ender for one of their stars on the defensive side of the ball. That is not the case. We are going to take our first time out of the day here on Money Moves. Still so much more to come. When we come back, we're going streaking. Close on, ladies and gentlemen. Don't be weird. Looking at some streaks headed into week 3 of this NFL season. There is one trend regarding relatively large favorites that has had a big impact on Survivor. Does it continue this week or not? We will discuss next.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Back here on Money Moves, football season is here as well, and it's time to bet smarter with ProfitX, the betting exchange built to give you better prices, not more juice. Unlike usual sportsbooks, ProfitX is a true exchange with deep liquidity and two-sided markets. Browse thousands of markets. We're talking player props, yes/no touchdown scores, game and season futures, golf outrights, and so much more. Jump in with confidence. They've also upgraded their live betting features where every tick matters, and the books usually take the biggest cut. On ProfitX, you'll find on average 20% better odds on money lines, spreads, totals, all compared to traditional sportsbook. That's more value on each and every ticket. Download ProfitX today and use the code VSIN, that's VSIN, turn up to $200 in profit cash over your first month. Again, that's promo code VSIN. Bet smarter this season with ProfitX.
We're going streaking through the quad and into the gymnasium. Come on, everybody!
You're my boy, Blue. Let's get into it. We're going streaking here on Money Moves, looking at a handful of streaks ahead of the NFL Week 3 slate. And we're going to start with the Thursday night matchup coming up tomorrow. Bills and Dolphins going head-to-head. Buffalo has dominated Miami at home in recent history. Over the last 8 meetings, JVT, Buffalo has won all 8 by an average of 15.3 points per game, scoring 36.1 points in those respective matchups. We talked yesterday as well about Buffalo's start offensively, top offense in the league in terms of yards per game, second in points per game. Does the streak continue as they are laying anywhere between 11.5 and 12.5 points depending on the book? Team total 30.5.
So I think you could argue that this is something and nothing at the same time. I think the reason why you could argue it's maybe nothing is because this is specifically at home, right, for Buffalo. There's been a couple of those been late season winter games that Tua has not generally played particularly well in. This is an early season matchup in Buffalo where you're not going to get those sort of conditions. Having said that, the Dolphins are not a good team, and I think that they're relatively poor on defense, and that this might continue but doesn't carry from what we have seen previously. Does that make sense? Like, what's happened in these previous games doesn't really matter for this one, but it still also might just continue because of how bad this Dolphins team is.
Again, I brought up the team total prop as well at 30.5 because Miami has given up 33 points in each of their first 2 games as well to round that out.
Dude, they're not good. Their pass rush hasn't been great, and especially if your pass rush isn't going to be great. Bills have a quarterback that can get out of the pocket, move to the right, extend plays, do all those sort of things that I think are going to be pretty dynamic and work against the secondary that's been awful.
I mentioned last segment before we went to break that one of these was going to have to do with Survivor. Very curious your opinion on this one. We have not had any carnage yet. big favorites have been at least doing their job straight up. So far, there have been 12 games with the favorite of 4 or more points. None of those favorites have lost their respective games. This is apparently the first time that's happened through 2 weeks in the Super Bowl era. This week, your favorites of 4 or more points. The aforementioned Bills, the Packers laying 8.5 against the Browns, Falcons laying 5.5 at the Panthers, Bucks laying 7 against the Jets, Seattle minus 7.5 hosting the Saints, the Chiefs laying 6 against the New York Giants, and the Ravens minus 4.5 against the Lions, those last 2 on Sunday and Monday night, respectively.
I mean, I think
do we get some chaos this week?
I think you can in that the little triumvirate that's kind of near each other with our logos there, the 2 NFC South teams and the Ravens. The Ravens are the obvious one because they're just taking on the best opponent in the Detroit Lions. But for both Tampa Bay and for Atlanta, as we covered in the open when we were talking a little bit about some of the injury issues and whatnot, the Buccaneers are going through their own injury issues. I don't think it would be a shock to see Tyrod Taylor come in this offense, which we saw some upside with against the Pittsburgh Steelers, take advantage of some of those. Bucs, of course, playing on a short week, playing on Sunday now after coming off of Monday, that you get them. And I know that our boy has not looked great out in Carolina, but those last drives after the first 2 chaotic ones, he did look much better. And there's a reality in which, again, an average defense with the lack of a pass rush gets picked apart a little bit here by the Carolina Panthers.
I like this. So you're saying we go from 12-0 to potentially a few upset specials this week, and I'm here for it. I
think it'd be crazy.
Speaking of those Carolina Panthers, I know when we talked earlier this week too, you said, I don't know if I want to bet them this week, because kind of got away with one last week against the Cardinals. The Carolina Panthers have covered JVT 5 straight as home dogs and are 6-1 ATS their last 7 times off a loss going back to last season.
Yeah.
Can they cover again? Does the streak continue?
I mean, this is where you'd prefer it. You open the season with 2 road games and 3 of your first 4 are on the road. They go to New England next week. Now you finally get your home opener. You get a week to prepare. You don't have to go anywhere against a team in Atlanta, as we just talked about. It's pretty vulnerable, I think, defensively. They look pretty strong for the most part against Minnesota. But I thought that, especially at the end, the touchdown was kind of the levee breaking after really Minnesota getting nothing from its offense. I think that this would be a time where I have definitely come more around on, you know what? I think we've used them in the first 2 weeks in the millions. I've bet them the first 2 weeks. 1-1. I think it's time to go back to the well here one more time and give this a shot.
Oh, yes, let's go. You talked yourself into it after our discussion yesterday.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this more and more, and just looking at the number, especially up to, 5.5 is not the most important number in the world. We've discussed it. There's a small argument to be made that it's a little bit more frequent in the last couple of years. But regardless, just from a pure power rating standpoint, to say that this Falcons team is 7 points better than Carolina on a neutral field just seems really strong by my measure.
Okay, I'm here for it. The Kansas City Chiefs are laying 6 in New York, taking on the Giants this week. Since the start of last season, Kansas City is 7-0 outright, but 0-7 covering the spread when laying at least 6 points. Does that spread continue, especially given the slow start Kansas City's had this year?
I mean, look, it speaks to what this team has been doing since the beginning of last season, and it hasn't worked out for them so far this year. Chargers game was not a one-score game, if I remember correctly. I apologize, on a Friday in Brazil. This last one was, though, and this is a team that I think is just going to be on the wrong.
It was.
Oh, was? Okay,
Yep.
Eventually got there, right? It was kind of
27-21 final.
It was kind of a backdoor one-score game, right? They scored late. Either way, you're not going to be able to get these done when you're just constantly in these one-score games, and that's a reflection of this. You're winning them, but you're not covering because in those instances, of course, you are more often than not the favorite. So I don't think that this is one where we're just going to continue to see this. Now, again, it's the Giants. They're going to be hot and cold, and I understand the dynamic. Yeah, there's going to be pretty volatile, but I'll echo it one more. It's a good defensive line. I don't think it'd be crazy to see Patrick Mahomes get kind of pressured. This offense looked like it's stuck in mud again and maybe not cover a low-scoring affair.
How about the puntless Indianapolis Colts? They have scored on their first 10 drives of the season, all 7 in week 1, and then the first 3 week 2. It was the longest streak to start a season in NFL history. And I bring this up because while I don't see them up right now at DraftKings and some of these other books, they do have those props for what will a team do on their opening drive. Had an opening drive field goal both games so far. Saints have allowed points on the opening drive. Titans, have allowed points on the opening drive of each of their 2 games too far. Do you look for an opening drive prop for a field goal or a touchdown on Indy this week?
I mean, I don't know. I don't think so.
Points on the board.
Because here's the thing, too. I think from a pricing standpoint, I'll be curious to see how it goes because this is all we're talking about. oh, they haven't punted yet. Like, well, okay, yeah, but they went for it on fourth down a couple of times. That's why they haven't punted. When you throw that out there, you do make it sound like this offense has been this unstoppable machine that has scored on every single drive. I don't know if that's the case. I haven't seen updated numbers in terms of expected points added on scripted plays, but through the first week, the Colts were kind of middle of the pack. You mentioned the fact that they haven't really found pay dirt on those opening drives. They scored, just hasn't been there. I just wonder from a pricing standpoint what you're going to get when those pop up, because it might be a little pricey.
Did put up 29 on this Broncos defense that everybody was telling me was going to be top 3 in the NFL, so not too shabby.
They're great.
Not too shabby. How about Baker Mayfield? He has a career-long streak of 7 straight games with multiple passing touchdowns going, facing a Jets defense that has struggled the first 2 games. Let Aaron Rodgers throw for 4 touchdowns. That said, Josh Allen didn't pass for any last week. All of the Bills' damage was done on the ground. So what do you think? Does the streak continue? Should we be targeting over 1.5 touchdowns on Baker?
One could argue the Steelers' damage was also done on the ground because Aaron Rodgers was jinking and dunking, and then everybody else was doing all the work for him.
Yak attack.
Yeah, you could see that. But again, it is a pretty negative scheduling spot for Baker. I don't really buy that. We've talked about it, the west to east travel, and if you actually cut it down, it's actually been profitable to bet on those teams because the market overreacts to that. But to play on a short week and a tough game like that and to come back here with the injuries that you experienced, maybe it's not the best time to do it, but you hit the nail on the head. I was trying to be positive about the Jets because I figured Aaron Glenn would get a defense that underperformed last year to turn it around. For 2 weeks, it hasn't been the case. So what if that is what this Jets team is going to be defensively? And it's almost like the Falcons. Remember, for the last couple of years, we've just been like, this Falcons team, there's so many weapons. If you just get them a quarterback, they're going to be a dangerous team. And it's the same thing here. It's like, this Jets squad, they're super talented on defense. You just got to get the right defensive mind in there. What if this is just what they are? An underperforming group of guys that do have some talent but aren't going to live up to it.
2 quarterback interception props I want your opinion on. Lamar Jackson has a streak of 22 passing touchdowns without a pick for his career on Monday Night Football. It's the longest streak of passing touchdowns without a pick on Monday night in NFL history. And Jordan Love, 9 straight games dating back to last season without an interception, 13 passing touchdowns in that span. Should we be targeting over touchdown passes and under the half an interception on these guys?
I mean, something about those Monday nights, right? For Lamar Jackson, just when those lights turn on. But didn't Baker Mayfield snap some streak the other day? Didn't you bring up some primetime stuff that he wasn't performing pretty well?
I didn't make it up.
No, I was saying you bring up. Yes. I said you brought up. Did you? I don't think you made it up. Sure, why not? A 9-game sample size is good enough for me to act on Jordan Love there.
Okay. Also, you said why not? That's a great tease because later on this hour, it is Why Not Wednesday.
Oh, hey, I did that.
So, dang, missed opportunity. Could have floated
Should have brought it up there. I got some good ones. I will say, I know you're the host, you're in control, you're going to There is an awards market out there that I think is woefully mispriced, and I think there's some good shots to take.
Okay, very curious what that is. We'll get into that a little bit later. But for now, we're going to step aside. When we come back, Fantasy Life's Kendall Valenzuela is going to join the show like she always does on a Wednesday. So many NFL injuries could create some fantasy and prop betting opportunities. We will get into it all coming up after this on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
We're rolling along on this Wednesday edition of Money Moves on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Stormy Buonantony and Jonathan Von Tobel with you. Time to dive into a little fantasy and prop conversation as Kendall Valenzuela joins us here on the Progressive Guest Line. Catch all of the work over at Fantasy Life. Does a great job as a fantasy football analyst. And great time to talk to you, Kendall, because of all of the injury news that has been coming out, most notably, of course, at the quarterback position. We have backup quarterbacks we're likely to see this week that include Jake Browning, Carson Wentz, Tyrod Taylor, Marcus Mariota, and Mac Jones. What are we supposed to do with this?
Oh, you don't like that for week 3 of the NFL season? You don't like the backup bowl that we get to talk about here today? It's brutal. Like that's the only way you can look at it. It's brutal. Don't give up, though. That's what Adam Ronis and I have been saying on our SiriusXM show is that, like, if you're 0-2 and now you've been hit with the injury bug for quarterbacks, there are still viable options out there on the waiver wire. I want to mention Daniel Jones because, again, every single week we have to mention Daniel Jones. Mm-hmm. He's more than likely going to be rostered by this point. So if you have to, Jake Browning is not a bad option. It's not a great schedule. Like when you look ahead, you might cringe a little bit for those games for the Bengals. But we've seen Browning in this situation before. He started 7 games for Joe Burrow in 2023. And when we look at him, he averaged 20 fantasy points per game, 80.2 PFF overall grade from 2023 to 2024, ranked 23rd out of 52 quarterbacks with at least 400 snaps. So there's some options out there. I mean, and then you're looking, if you need a streamer, you can go back to Mac Jones probably. It looks like one more time. I wouldn't necessarily recommend the other guys that are coming in. A Tyrod Taylor, anyone like Tyrod Taylor, I'm not necessarily loving unless you're in a really, really bad situation. Carson Wentz, I'm not necessarily loving as well, but it's just brutal. So hopefully you can go out and hit the waiver wire and that there are some options out there. But I think Jake Browning, Daniel Jones will be the 2 best ones.
So I thought to build on the quarterback angle real quick, Kendall, I was actually going to ask about the opposite, which was, do you go for Jake Browning maybe after this matchup with the Vikings defense that could be one of the best in the NFL and stream Carson Wentz this week against a pretty bad defense, but you don't think that could be one of the options for you?
Yeah, the thing is that we know what Jake Browning can give us, and we haven't seen Carson Wentz start a game, and I think the stat was 2023. So you can, I mean, there's always that option, right? I would actually go, if you're going to go that way, just go with Mac Jones or maybe some of those other guys. We've got our rankings. I actually updated my rankings for week 1 right before I came on here. So you guys can go see our weekly ranks at fantasylife.com. But yeah, that is an option. I think if you're streaming, then yeah, like there are better ways that you can go because like I said, you'll look at Jake Browning and you'll say, wow, I don't really like these matchups coming up. But if for some reason, like Michael Penix is still a good option, Sam Darnold is even one I said that I've seen him floating around sometimes where like, I don't love Sam Darnold and the Seahawks, but they're going up against the New Orleans Saints. But yeah, Carson Wentz, our consensus QB 28 going into this week.
For the Minnesota Vikings, we know J.J. McCarthy is going to be absent, but also getting the news last night that Aaron Jones is being placed on injured reserve. You told us for a while that Jordan Mason would be important, and now obviously he certainly is. But if you were someone that had Aaron Jones on your fantasy team, where else should you be looking right now?
Yeah, if you are losing Aaron Jones, I'm so sorry. Because, again, this is another week where you're going to hate me saying that there's not a lot of good running back options because there just is not a lot of good running back options. A couple weeks ago, I know we talked a lot about tight ends, but I think if Bashal Tutin is out there for the Jacksonville Jaguars, he's someone that you can pick up. It's not necessarily a start right away situation, though. It's not a 1-for-1 for Aaron Jones. You're not going to find someone on the waiver wire that has production and just potential fantasy outings like Aaron Jones, but at least Bashal Tutin has a path now because they shipped off Tank Bigsby over to the Philadelphia Eagles, so he is the obvious RB2 in that situation. I've put small bids in for Chris Rodriguez, Jeremy McNichols, 2 running backs for the Washington Commanders, because we know that Austin Eckler, he went down with an injury. He is gone for the season with the Achilles. And so I don't actually know, guys, what this backfield is going to look like. This might be more of a wait-and-see situation. I like Chris Rodriguez a little bit more than McNichols, but we could come on here next week and it could be totally flipped. But those are 2 other running backs that I think you can look for. And yeah, it's brutal out there. It's been a bad couple of weeks on the waiver wire to start the season.
What about some pass catchers? I wanted to actually ask specifically because I was looking through this team just yesterday. Green Bay, it seems that Jordan Love's done a pretty good job of sharing the sugar and distributing targets. Tucker Kraft, I think, is like the guy, but he's a tight end. Of these wide receivers for Green Bay, how are we handling this situation?
Yeah, it's one of those things where Tucker Kraft is amazing, and I actually wrote up Romeo Doubs. I liked Romeo Doubs just a little bit more than Dontavian Wicks, but I do think, if Wicks is available, Romeo Doubs isn't, that you could go for either of those guys. I think you just have to know that it's going to be a gross situation. Like, it is kind of toxic for fantasy football. I want to believe that Matthew Golden will eventually step up and be that wide receiver one that they need him to be. We saw him last week. I mean, he had a couple passes thrown his way. One was overthrown, one was underthrown. And if he was coming down with those, we would be having different conversations about him going into week 3. So I think Romeo Doubs more specifically is someone that I targeted this week if I saw him. Dontavian Wicks again. But it's just going to be, if you throw him in there, you just got to kind of hope and pray that maybe the ball comes their way and they're just going to keep distributing it that way as well.
The Tennessee Titans schedule hasn't done their quarterback Cam Ward a whole lot of favors with the defenses they've had to play against the Broncos and the Los Angeles Rams. But I know somebody you were thinking could be a potential flex option in the near future is one of his wideouts, a young guy in Alec Iomanor. Why do you think their chemistry could create opportunity for him moving forward?
Yeah, I really just like, when we're looking at guys on the waiver wire like Alec Iomanner, you almost have to look at the utilization to tell yourself a story. Dwayne McFarland for us does a great job with the utilization report every single week. So when you look at him, he is available in over 90% of leagues, which I don't think he should be. And then the other thing is that after 2 games, he ranks second on the Titans in target share at 24%. And then he also leads the team with a not sexy number. I get it, but he leads the team with 9.5 fantasy points per game. So to me, these first 2 games were really difficult. That's why I also say you should be buying Tony Pollard at a low price right now if you can, because I think that along the way, even with Tajay Spears coming back eventually, he's still going to be really good. Alec Iomanner is one of those guys where he's a boom bust wide receiver 4 right now, but you want to be early on someone like that. So someone like him is someone that you talk about in a couple weeks and you say, oh man, I should have gone and gotten him, stashed him on my bench. There are some guys that I've dropped for him, like some of the Seahawks guys, Torrey Horton. I'm just like, okay, I can't wait this long anymore for him. So Alec Iomanner has the utilization and has kind of the role right now where you say, if this team does get going and he gets a lot better with his quarterback, Cam Ward, it's going to look good in a couple weeks.
Does the injuries, or at least the healing of injuries, I should say, for the Texans wide receiver core do anything for you? It looks like Christian Kirk is expected to play week 3. Braxton Berrios on his way back. Does that do anything for you?
Now, I don't have much Christian Kirk, to be totally honest. If you were waiting on him, you're kind of happy about it. But I'm still holding steady for my Jaden Higgins shares. Jalen Noel, too, I would hang on to him as well because we've seen Christian Kirk go down with injuries before. Obviously, we saw it just to start the season. So I would say you hope that, your shares of Jaden Higgins, Noel as well, maybe get better as the season goes on. But that offensive line has to get better to start those things. I mean, it looks really bad. It almost looks like this Texans offense is going to be the same as what we saw last year, maybe even worse. So for CJ Stroud and company, you just have to hope that they start meshing and gelling a little bit better and that offensive line gets better as you go, because really it's just Nico Collins, and even Nico Collins managers right now are a little bit nervous about what they've seen.
Another thing I was selfishly curious about, and I'm hoping you can answer this question, looking at the Cardinals and 49ers going head-to-head this weekend, Arizona has had a ton of injuries on their back end defensively. It feels like every corner has gone down. Do you think that could create some opportunity, whether it be from a fantasy or prop perspective, from some of these 49ers pass catchers, even though it is largely a no-name group right now?
Yeah, I think for the 49ers specifically, I've still had a really good place for Juwan Jennings. Like, I can look through my rankings as well, but Juwan Jennings is someone that I think if you have him, you're kind of okay with being able to start him this week. I've got him as my consensus wide receiver 30, or it's consensus wide receiver 31 this week for Juwan Jennings. Ricky Pearsall as well, kind of the top guys that you see, and then Christian McCaffrey is our number 1 overall player going into this week. So especially for Juwan Jennings, though, like, you were a little bit nervous last week because he was coming in a bit banged up, but he still showed that he can come down with fantasy points for you. So that's exactly what you want to see. And you just hope that Ricky Pearsall can get going a little bit, because I think some people were drafting Pearsall ahead of Juwan Jennings in the offseason because of his injuries coming into the season, because of his contract situation as well. So I do think you can exploit it this week, and you hopefully get big games out of a lot of these guys.
Kendall, thank you so much for the time. As always, we'll check in with you again next week.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Kendall Valenzuela, everybody. Again, head over to fantasylife.com. Check out all of the work. She's updating waiver wire stuff all of the time. Also, listen on SiriusXM Fantasy Channel 87.
Great guest on Mondays at 11:35 a.m. Pacific time.
Who is that? Who's there, by the way?
Jonathan Von Tobel.
Yeah, make sure that's great that you guys each show up on each other's shows. I'm not great with the fantasy stuff. That's why I'm always needy for information. I need help.
We don't do a ton of fantasy. We do some player prop stuff as well and all that kind of stuff. They're all married together, all in one big pot.
That's the beauty of it. A lot of these angles that Kendall shares with us, we can push toward some of the prop markets as we get into them closer to Sunday. I'm glad we closed talking the San Francisco 49ers, because as we shift gears to Why Not Wednesday coming up next, looking at a handful of plus money or long shot prop options, bets moving forward. One of them does involve a San Francisco 49er pass catcher. We'll get into that and more coming up after this on Money Moves.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Back here on on Money Moves, VSiN, the Sports Betting Network, and as the official horse rating partner of VSiN, remember, First Bet is built for bettors who demand more. First Bet isn't just about placing a bet, it's about helping bettors of all levels with proprietary AI handicapping tools that provide data-driven insights to help you make the most informed bet possible. First Bet's in-app tools give you win, place, and show probabilities for each runner so you can quickly and easily identify good value plays and improve that ROI. Right now, you can take advantage of their limited time $250 sign-up offer. To claim your bonus, use our promo code VSIN250, that's VSIN250, when you sign up in the First Bet app or at firstbet.com, the number one, stbet.com. Again, using that promo code VSIN250.
Question, maybe a stupid one, but I'm just spitballing here.
Can it make you say why not?
That wasn't a stupid question.
It's time for Why Not Wednesday.
I mean, why not?
You know when they say it's so crazy it just might work?
All right, this is our Plus Money Honey segment of the week. Why Not Wednesday? Looking at some plus money, long shot options, some upset bids, having a little bit of fun here. And we are 4 weeks into the college football season, and JVT gets the segment now, which is very exciting. And we're going to start in college football.
I don't know.
Am I wrong?
You might be.
Why not means yes, okay. No means no, okay? We're going to start in college football. Can you say why not? To the Tulane Green Wave, upsetting the Ole Miss Rebels this week. Plus 350 is the price. What do you think?
Can I have the prosecutor's argument on this?
Oh, I'm just saying, like, looking at, I mean, I don't think Ole Miss is all that in a bag of chips, 100%, the way that they have been starting this season so far. Mm-hmm. And this whole Jake Retzlaff thing has really seemed to work for Tulane. You thought once Darian Mensah gets paid $1 billion to go over to Duke and have everything change over that it was going to be a loss. Look what Tulane did last week. Never trailed wire to wire. I'm of the belief that Tulane is for real. They are the favorite now to be the Group of 5 CFP representative, and this would be a massive prove-it game. Plus 350, I'm ready to spice up my life and have a little fun with the Mean Green Wave.
Sure, why not? You look at some of the Ole Miss numbers defensively, middle of the pack by EPA standards, giving up over 6 yards per play by some accounts. This is not a group that I would trust on that side. So if you're going to give up some explosives, not perform pretty well, you're always going to keep an opponent in it, especially a lesser opponent. I think you can pull this off if you're Tulane. So sure.
I'm definitely rooting for them. Even if the bet isn't placed, I am rooting for Tulane this week. Let's get her done. What's next for you? Okay, so I've kind of combined two. I apologize if this is throwing our crew for a whirl, but we'll throw up the first one and build on the second one. This is mostly about Defensive Rookie of the Year. Jahad Campbell, Defensive Rookie of the Year at 9-1. I will ask the question, as well as Carson Schweschinger, interior linebacker for the Cleveland Browns. I apologize for butchering your name. Defensive Rookie of the Year at about 22-1. These obviously both go hand in hand because they are in the same awards market. But the whole point here, Stormy, is that I believe we have a flawed favorite at the top of this market. And that's the thing that I think is really interesting. If you break this down overall by where these two guys are at that I'm mentioning for this award in terms of like PFF grade, overall impact, different metrics, then you compare it to what we've seen from Abdul Carter of the New York Giants. Carter's not played particularly well. He has 1 sack. By PFF grading standards, he's actually pretty low. But then you look at the guys that I'm mentioning here. Jahad Campbell, the highest graded defender, rookie defender, by PFF standards, outside of Noe Williams, but Williams has only played 1 game and 8 total snaps, so that's sample size. We don't really count that. If you look at Schweschinger, second in terms of PFF grade for these rookies defensively. He's a starter. He's played 105 snaps. Tackles, he's up there. He's getting all the 8 tackles, 4 assists, all sorts of things. He's asked to do a lot across the board in terms of what he's asked. In terms of Schweschinger, really high grade in terms of coverage, good tackler. I just think there's different ways to look here than, hey, look at that pass rushing New York defensive end. Like, that's not, that I don't think is accurately priced. He does not have this gap right now through 2 weeks on this pack. It's such a noisy award. But just looking at some different ways to evaluate some of these defenders, my whole point here is I'd rather go elsewhere, and I landed on Campbell and Schweschinger, and for sure Carson I did add as a bet to my portfolio here. I need to do a little more research on the defensive numbers for some of these guys, but the arguments you laid out certainly makes some sense, so I'll say why not. I'll roll. If only you knew. I like a 22-1. Well, dude, you're all in on the defensive props. You're crushing the tackles every week. Got to do it. We'll bring it back on Friday. Rolling. Now that you're finally gone on a Friday, we can do this. Thanks for that. Can you say why not to Texas A&M to make the SEC title game? It is sitting 4-1 right now. And I was just looking at the odds board with this and how much potential there is for carnage still when it comes to this SEC schedule and who's playing who. The fact that Alabama is plus 240 and Texas A&M is 4-1 is a little bit stunning to me, especially given the schedule that A&M has. And listen, they've got some defensive issues, but when Mike Elko is your head coach, I feel like that's something that they're going to be able to figure out along the way. An important game coming up next weekend against Auburn, which they need to win and I think should. Mississippi State sure is a little bit more plucky than they used to be, but the only real big tough game is, in my opinion, LSU at night in the end of October. They end the season at Texas, but what is Texas really? I'm not necessarily sold on this team yet either. I think there's potential for opportunity with a healthy Marcel Reed and that defense getting things figured out over the course of the schedule to make the SEC title game.
I disagree. I don't know what I'm supposed to say when I say.
Well, you have to, just say disagree, but why?
Okay. I don't want to put too much stock in that offensive performance against Notre Dame. I don't think Notre Dame's good on defense. And so I don't want to put too much into, hey, Marcel Reed and this offense for Texas A&M, they're dangerous. Look what they did to Utah State. Look what they did to Notre Dame.
So that just cements next week against Auburn will be really important.
Right, it will, and we'll learn a little bit more. So if you're going to ball out there and give me some good offensive numbers, I would agree. But I personally would pump the brakes because we've seen some pretty poor defensive numbers from Notre Dame. We talked about that in the sense of looking at them with Purdue coming up too, that I think they're going to give up some explosives and allow Purdue to stay inside of that number. I'm not sure if I'm buying that performance against Notre Dame and using that as a springboard to then trust them in the big picture.
Who do you think plays in the SEC title game? To me, it feels super up for grabs.
Yeah, I think
Georgia's your favorite, minus 110.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think it'd be shocking if it's Georgia, LSU, or...
Sure. But would you be shocked if a Texas or a Texas A&M or an Oklahoma squeaks into that?
Oklahoma, I think, is probably I should be fair and include them in that. We haven't really seen them play. They did well against Michigan, but then, Underwood's first road start as a true freshman, maybe that really played into it. But as we've talked about with Oklahoma, that's why they should be included here too. By EPA standards, by some measure, they are the best defense in the country right now, and that's going to be something that I think is going to be pretty effective when you get into the the brunt of SEC play.
Alabama is a shorter shot than LSU right now, despite them being at Georgia next week. They've got Tennessee, they've got LSU, they've got Oklahoma, they've got the Iron Bowl. Interesting. Okay, what's next for you?
Let's see. Oh, I wanted to ask you about this. I wanted a more sparking conversation about these next two. Brandon Ayuk, comeback player of the year at 75-1.
Love.
Now, this isn't necessarily, even though I threw him in there, pro Ayuk. It's more, should we be looking more at the deeper ends of this market? Because obviously I think, I have Dak Prescott from before the season started to win this award. Having said that, if you look at the rest of these competitors for this award, there's some room for movement up this board when you look at some of these players, especially those who are listed at the top. When you have guys like Daniel Jones, who, again, I think you draw a line through him. I don't think he's winning the award. Sam Darnold didn't win it last year. He was in third place. J.K. Dobbins finished ahead of Sam Darnold. That's all you need to know about comeback player coming back from sucking. They ruled it out. So I don't think you can use Daniel Jones. We'll see what Christian McCaffrey is, but do you trust that he's going to stay healthy throughout this entire year? And I think that means, all right, let's look around. Let's find some guys. I wanted to bring up your guy, Brandon Ayuk. I wanted to bring up Max Crosby, starting defensive end for the Las Vegas Raiders. Now expectant father, Stephon Diggs, at 50-1 potentially. I just think that I think the whole premise here is just that you can look deeper in this awards market, I think, for comeback players.
I absolutely agree. I do want to give a counterpoint to your Daniel Jones thing, because I do think if he balls out this season, that he would be in play. Yes, the voters took that into account for 1 year. But I think if Daniel Jones, who has sucked for so long and who has had a lengthy injury history himself, if he ends up staying healthy and has a masterful year, I could see the voters changing their tune on that. I'm just going to put it out there. They're humans.
No shot. I will tell you no. How do we settle this?
I wouldn't bet it at 7-1, but when it was 30-1, yeah, I think that it's fine. Okay, but let me follow up on Ayuk. I think, yes, 75-1, considering the limited options that there already are in the San Francisco 49ers wide receiver, just general pass catching group, especially with George Kittle's injury. Brock Purdy is going to be coming back healthy. Ayuk is only going to be missing the first 4 games of the season. We expect, ideally, yes, he's coming in that
real quick
opportunity.
To cut you off, does it matter? Joe Flacco won it with 5 games, 6 games.
Fair.
They've
I think
given
as
it
a
to
wide
guys,
receiver, you need to
but
bump
I'm just
up
saying,
the numbers a little bit more.
If you miss 6 games, I think you're going to be good.
Yes, I guess my point being, with a quarterback, you're touching the ball every offensive snap. Wide receiver, it's not the same, so you might need a little bit more runway there. But I think when Brock Purdy comes back, if he's healthy and he becomes the dude he was prior to the injury, then Yeah, that's very much in play, and that 75-1 is going to shrink real quick. That said,
There's
Christian
no
McCaffrey
shot.
is the favorite for a reason.
There's no shot Daniel Jones.
Can Christian McCaffrey stay healthy all year?
By the way, that's another thing, too. That's ridiculous. Christian McCaffrey should not be the favorite to win this award. Dak Prescott should be.
Interesting.
And there's no shot Daniel Jones is winning this award. I will say that like 1,000 times.
Okay, we got to step aside when we come back.
Absolutely no shot.
ESPN's Chris Button with us next. Help us kick off hour 2. She survived the crown storm at Georgia Tech's dramatic upset win over Clemson, is back on the sideline for the Tigers this week. We'll get her thoughts on Clemson and Georgia Tech big picture, the game against Syracuse this week, and more. Stay with us.